Hi everybody, my name is Tom Stanley. Welcome to Dig In. Today we're going to dig into some fascinating objects here at the Penn Museum. Some of my favorites, but that often get kind of overlooked by some of our visitors because A, they're broken, B, we have tons of them, and C, they're usually dirt colored. That's right, we're talking about sherds. Sherds. And I'm here to talk today with one of our resident sherd nerds here at the Penn Museum. Her name is Dr. Megan Kasbaum. She is Weingarten Assistant Curator in our American section. Hi, Meg.
Hi, Tom.
How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastically. Thank you. Very excited to talk to you about sherds today.
Well, I'm very excited to talk to you about sherds today.
Okay, well, first of all, tell me, for those who aren't in the know about sherds, what is a sherd exactly?
So at the most basic level, a sherd is a broken piece of pottery. It's actually short for potsherd. If you were to sort of ask around amongst archaeologists, most of them would say that a sherd has to come from an archaeological site, or at least it usually does. But in fact, it doesn't. You could find a sherd not on an archaeological site. But most of the time when I use the word, I use it to mean a broken piece of pottery found on an archaeological site somewhere around the world.
Okay, but I could find, you're saying I could find a potsherd in my backyard, in my garden when I'm digging?
Yeah, you absolutely could. In fact, I know that one of our other staff members here in the anthropology department has found some sherds in his backyard, or more appropriately, his dog has found some sherds in his backyard.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
To be clear, we are saying sherd right now and not shard. Am I correct?
Yes, you are correct. And to an archaeologist, that is a really, really important distinction. So to an archaeologist, a sherd means it's made of pottery. A shard, on the other hand, could be made of glass or metal or a variety of other materials. If you look this up in a dictionary, it's not necessarily going to specify that a sherd and a shard are different things. It's going to say it's sort of two versions of the same word. But most archaeologists disagree wholeheartedly with that and actually feel pretty strongly about it. I have given students bad grades before for getting that word mixed up.
Wow, what a fascinating controversy.
Indeed.
You got a bunch of sherds here for us to look at. I see a bunch of different sizes, different colors, some different designs on them. What can all these things tell us, Meg?
Well, I picked these sherds out specifically to give you some examples of the types of things that I can learn from just looking at broken pottery. So we learn about past people in sort of two main ways when we look at sherds. One of those ways is in terms of determining sort of how old a site is that we might be excavating. So if you think about it, if I showed you a picture of like a 1920s pickup truck, a 1950s pickup truck, and a 1990s pickup truck, you could probably tell me which one came from which time period. They look pretty different.
Absolutely, I'm like a truck expert.
Well, I'm a sherd expert, so I can do that with pottery, which means that when I look at these various pieces, I can tell you a lot about when this site dates based on the designs that I'm seeing on the sherds. The decoration on these also tell me some other really interesting things. So if you think about the type of pottery that you have in your house, you probably have some really fancy things, maybe snazzy wedding china that you might have gotten when you got married, or you might have even inherited from a grandparent or something like that. And then you also have things as basic as like Tupperware, stuff that you're going to store your leftovers in. So by looking at the decorations on these things, I can tell that some pots, this one for example, were probably really, really fancy and were meant in order to sort of display food, like you might put your turkey on for Thanksgiving dinner.
Like your nice china.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And then ones like this are probably storage vessels. They're sort of more crudely decorated. They're different shape and everything like that. So this is probably something that was more used for storing food over the long term and maybe wasn't meant to display anything in the same way. And that sort of brings us to the second way we learn a lot about people and the activities of the past through pottery, and that's through vessel shape and size. So when we're looking at these sherds, we're not just looking at the way they're decorated. We're also looking at what we can tell about the types of vessels that they once came from.
And how do you collect these pieces of pottery when you're on site?
So all sorts of different ways. We're collecting, when we're down in the field, we're collecting nearly every object that we come across. And if we're digging very slowly, a piece like this is really easy to collect by hand. We can be digging along with our trowel, we pop a piece of pottery out of a trash midden or basically a trash dump, and we can take that piece of pottery and put it away in a bag. If we're digging more quickly, trying to move through the excavation faster, and we're using, say, shovels, we actually then take all of the dirt that we dig up with those shovels, we put it into buckets, and then we dump all of those buckets through a screen that allows all of the surrounding sediment to fall through, and all those nice artifacts sit right up there on the top of that screen for us to collect.
But you're not just finding sherds among those artifacts. I would imagine you're also finding things that aren't artifacts, like rocks, and then other things that might kind of be artifacts, like bones, for example.
Yeah, so we're finding rocks, both rocks that are and are not artifacts. The people that I study use a lot of stone tools as well. But we're also finding bone, we're finding pieces of architectural remains, so sort of the mud and daub that might have been put on the outside of their houses. But the main artifact types that we find are ceramic, like sherds like these, bone, and rock. Those are the three main material types that we come across.
And how do you tell the difference between these things, especially when they're, all covered in dirt and have been for the last 1,000 years or more?
Well, you have stumbled across one of the most interesting scientific techniques that I use regularly in the lab. Sometimes it's really difficult to tell what those things are just by glancing at them. They're all flat. They're all, within maybe a centimeter thickness or so. And so the method that I teach my students, this might be hard to believe, is that you can tell the difference between bone, pottery, and stone by licking it.
Like with your tongue?
Like with your tongue. So, I don't know if you want to try this, but if you want to try this, I can't guarantee that these objects haven't been licked before.
Okay.
But if I gave you 3 objects, all of which are sort of flat, brown, and broken, all things that you described sherds as earlier in this video. And I told you to sort of lick each of them, just very gently, just put your tongue on each of them. What I want you to be testing for as you do this, I'm going to hand you 3 different things, and what I want you to be testing for is whether or not they stick to your tongue at all. Whether or not you can feel that object sort of sticking to your tongue, or if you can't feel that at all.
And if it does stick to my tongue, then that's telling me...
Well, why don't we try it?
Okay.
Okay, all right.
Here, hand it to me so I can't...
Okay, you try this one first.
Okay. Maybe a little bit, maybe a tiny bit of stick, but not much.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe I'll try the other side here.
Try licking the edge of it. That might make it easier.
That's sticking a little more.
Okay.
That's a little sticky.
All right, and then this one.
And then this one.
Yeah.
Whoa. That is, oh my gosh.
I think you figured it out.
Oh my gosh.
So one of those, I actually saw that a little bit. That last one.
Yeah, I felt like I was in the Christmas story or something.
Well, there you go. So what you did when you did that, you said the first one didn't stick very much, maybe a teeny bit.
Right.
The second one stuck distinctly more. And then the third one stuck enough that it like yanked your tongue back out of your mouth a little bit.
It really did. It almost hurts a little bit.
So the first one was stone. The second one was pottery, a sherd. And the third one was bone. And the reason that's happening is that those materials have different porosity. They've got lots of little holes inside of them, but a stone is going to have the least number of those holes and the smallest holes. Pottery is going to have bigger holes than stone, but not too big. And then bone is very porous. It can absorb a lot of that water off your tongue, causing it to stick. So the first one that you licked was a stone, the second one that you licked was a potsherd, and the third one that you licked is a bone.
These are the oldest things that I've ever licked, I think. It's probably a good thing. Have I damaged these objects at all by licking them just now?
You haven't damaged them at all. So all you did was put a little bit of water on them. They've already been washed with water a couple of times now, once in the field during recovery, and then once back here in the lab, just to make sure that all of the dirt and various things are off of them so that we can see their surfaces more clearly.
So amazingly nerdy. I'm giddy with nerdiness.
Well, as you should be.
As I should be, as I usually am. Tell me, are there particular sherds that are more famous than others? Are there really famous sherds out there that everybody should know about?
That's a good question. So I'm going to give you one example of a sherd that maybe isn't that famous outside of the United States, but to the prehistory of North America is a really important sherd. So this site is in the state of Georgia, so down in the American South, on an island in the middle of a river. The site is called Stallings Island, and a lot of sherds have been found there. But the particularly famous ones represent basically the earliest pottery technology that we have here in the United States. If you were to look outside of the United States, though, an example that I can give you is actually related to some of the work that's being done here in the Penn Museum, particularly by my colleague, Patrick McGovern. He does a really cool and very different style of shirt analysis than what I do. I mostly focus on decoration, on shape, and on style. And he's really interested in how we can use highly scientific techniques to help us understand what was being put in these vessels, particularly what might have been cooked or stored in these vessels. And recently, he published an article that argued that a particular potsherd found in the country of Georgia this time, not the state where I just was, but the country of Georgia, actually represents the earliest evidence that we have in the world of wine. Now, if that isn't a cool and exciting shirt, I don't know what is. Yay! It's about 8,000 years old, about 1,000 years earlier than any of the other evidence of wine that we already have. So that was a really cool discovery that was basically made by looking at not what's on the shirt or what it might represent about the vessel, but actually what's absorbed into that shirt through time based on what's being stored inside of it.
It's incredible how much we can learn from these shirts, isn't it?
Right? This little tiny thing can tell us a huge amount of information, both about the pot it came from, but also about the people who made it and used it and then eventually threw it away.
Cool.